Okay, so Carla and Agata, can we start now? Okay, perfect. Okay, first let me share my screen. Okay. So good afternoon and hello from Poland, and welcome to our 7th webinar from MCAA or Marie Curie Alumni Associations Around the World webinar series. And this webinar, if some of you probably don't know, that this webinar runs regularly every second Friday each month. And before we start for the event today, I'm going to give you some information about the next event that will be next month. And this next webinar will be collaborated with Turkey chapter, and they're going to discuss about the collaborations between, sorry, I couldn't see my screen, the collaborations between humanities and STEM. And soon you will give some information about the registration and how to join. And today we're going to have 3 outstanding speakers, but we still wait for one of them to join us. And as today we're going to talk about how to engaging kids in science. And this webinar is the collaborations from with MCAA and also with Poland chapter. And I personally would like to thank Michael Nonas as the chair for organizing this event. And before we start, I'm going to give you some brief introductions for our speakers today. The first one is Carla Valenti. She is an author of fiction and children's book, including My Super Science Hero series. This is specifically for the children aged between 4 to 9. And this is a collaboration between MCAA and Sourcebook. That's My Super Science Heroes book brings the energy and dynamism of superhero comics to the life of important scientists, chronicling their achievements through the lens of particular trait or skills. And for more information about Carla, you can reach through her website, carlavalenti.com. And the next speaker is Agata Goździk. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. And she's a geophysics educator and science communicator. And also she is the head of the Science Communication Education Department in the Institute of Geophysics Polish Academy of Science. And she coordinates several big educational initiatives both at national and European levels, such as EDU-ARCTIC, ERIS, ODYSSEY, BRITEC, and EDU-ARCTIC too. And she's also worked as the Deputy Director for the Department of Environmental Education in the Polish Ministry of Environment, and as a Director of the Science Promotion and Dissemination Department in the Polish Academy of Science. Now she's currently a member of Climate Crisis Advisory Team to the Chairman of the Polish Academy of Science. And last but not least is Jan Martin Veslowski. He's a professor, marine biologist, and specialized in coastal ecosystem, biodiversity, and climate change effects. He is field worker with more than 50 months on polar and marine expeditions, mainly to the Arctic from Canada, Greenland, Svalbard to Russia. And recently, he's a director of Institute of Oceanology, PAS. And he has deeply interested in human-nature relations, citizen science activity, and also popularization of research. He's also the author of several short stories addressed to school kids and regular contribution to Wildlife Magazine and other public media. So those are the brief introduction for our 3 outstanding speakers today. And without further ado, we're going to start with Carla. Carla, stage is yours.
Thank you. And thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm delighted to be in this great company. I will launch a short presentation I have for everybody. Bear with me here. There we go. So first of all, I'm delighted to be here. I think this is a great opportunity to talk about how we can engage young minds through the power of storytelling, specifically as it applies to science. The collaboration I have had with the Marie Curie Alumni Association has been nothing short of phenomenal. I have enjoyed working with so many wonderful people and really using our combined efforts to reach children in a unique and innovative and exciting way. So a little bit of background to launch us off. As was mentioned, I'm an author of picture books, chapter books, and novels for children. In 2017, I responded to a call for proposals that was put out by the Marie Curie Alumni Association, looking to partner with an author to write a series of stories for children that would introduce scientific figures in a fun and original way. My background isn't in science. I don't actually even have a background in nonfiction writing. So initially I was a bit hesitant to jump in and take this challenge, but I was very drawn to the mandate of drawing or appealing to young minds to science through storytelling. As a storyteller, I understand the power of storytelling. As somebody who is not an engineer or math-minded, I've always been intimidated by science, but I've always loved it. I've been fascinated by it. So I was the target demographic for a project like this, and I decided to take on the task. So the question that I wanted to pose was, what if superheroes didn't have supernatural powers, but they were humans with incredible drive who worked really hard to expand their knowledge? In short, what if our superheroes were scientists? So my proposal was accepted to my great delight, and I began working with Micaela Crespo and the incredibly talented Italian illustrator Annalisa Beghelli. And together we began developing the My Super Science Heroes series. Now, the initial plan for this series was to crowdsource the campaign to raise enough funds to publish the book. We launched the campaign and it went viral. Within the month of our launch, we had not only exceeded our crowdsourcing budget, but we had actually caught the attention of one of the top publishers in the United States for children's literature, Sourcebooks. By the end of the month, they had reached out to us and made us an offer for world rights on this series, which was delightful and very exciting. So we took our next step. The My Super Science Heroes project is a picture book series for children ages 4 to 9. It's written in partnership with the Marie Curie Alumni Association as consultants. And the goal here was to use key traits that are embodied by all scientists, whether they're 4 or 90. And we call these superpowers. These are traits that children have already in them or that they can access directly. They don't have to be geniuses. They don't have to have a PhD. They just have to live these traits that they embody. And the stories are the story of how those traits can play a meaningful role in helping people, scientists in this case, reach their objectives. And in the process, defeat whatever nemesis stands in their way. So as you can see, we were building up this superhero framework, which is really appealing to young minds and young readers, but combining it with the science, the science background. So each trait is paired with a specific scientist who demonstrated to great ease or capability that trait as a power that enabled them to achieve whatever they set out to achieve. And our hope was that the children would be inspired by these scientists, not necessarily by their successes or their accomplishments, but the traits, the superpowers they leveraged in pursuing these goals. The first book is Marie Curie and the Power of Persistence. So I wanted to share the first page here to give you a sense of the tone and the feel of the story, the illustrations, the dynamic energy that we brought to this project. Marie Curie obviously was not a superhero with a cape, but she did have the superpower of persistence. This is the first page of the first book of the series that introduces the whole framework. And we have super evil nemesis who's reading his favorite book, How to Take Over the World in One Easy Step. You can see his minions around him. And what they conclude is that if you stop the spread of knowledge, that is the key to taking over the world. And so he sets off to vanquish all of these superheroes, and the story begins. In The Power of Persistence, readers meet Marie as a young girl, and they learn how she encountered opposition through her life, personally and professionally. This opposition is caricaturized by this little creature you see on the side, who we call Mr. Opposition. And at the beginning of Marie's life, Mr. Opposition is huge. And he's opposing her with everything from learning how to walk, which is this picture here. He's pulling away the chair and opposing her efforts to learn to walk. And yet Marie persists. She figures out how to walk despite the opposition that is presented to her. Mr. Opposition, as Marie grows, takes on different guises, representing her inability to find the education that she wanted, representing all the obstacles that she found in her life, personally and professionally. They are together her entire life, because as is the case with all of us, our obstacles are often our lifelong obstacles. And rather than get rid of them, we have to learn to live with them. Defeating these obstacles isn't necessarily squashing them and killing them, it's incorporating them into our life. And that is what Marie shows in this book. Her persistence in the face of the constant obstacles is her superpower. So much so that in the end of her life, not only does she defeat Mr. Opposition, she brings him over to her side, where he then shares in her persistence to learn about the world, to understand things. So of course, we all know she was a very brilliant scientist, but the message we wanted to convey to the young readers here isn't necessarily that her success was tied to her accomplishments, to her Nobel Prize, but her success was tied to her perseverance in attaining those goals. The second book in the series is Alan Turing and the Power of Curiosity. Similarly, the books start with super evil nemesis who sets out to vanquish this scientist and stop the spread of knowledge. As with Marie Curie, in this case, we thought that Alan Turing's superpower, the trait that he embodied that really represented him in every aspect of his life, was an insatiable curiosity. And so we launch into Alan Turing's story. In this case, his minion or his opposing is Miss Enigma, and she sets out to confuse and confound him with the hope that he will be so flustered by all of these confusing things that the world presents him that he'll just give up on learning anything. So in her story, this was a really fun book to write because her speech is code. The whole book is code until Alan actually figures out how to translate, how to decipher her speech. And then they're able to communicate with each other. At the end of the book, we actually have a number of secret ciphers that the readers can break down for themselves and try to figure out. The illustrations have a lot of coded artwork in them as well, so that young readers can apply their own curiosity in trying to understand Alan Turing's story. And what was really fun here is that we brought in all of the elements of Alan Turing's life. So for instance, with the Turing machine and how he was able to decode things. And so you will see in the book that actually plays a big role in both Miss Enigma and Alan Turing's story. And at the end, Alan's superpower of curiosity is no match for Miss Enigma, who is brought over to his side and is using her own curiosity to solve her own questions. And as you can see, the illustration even of Miss Enigma changes dramatically as the story progresses. With Marie Curie, Mr. Opposition becomes smaller to the point where he fits in her pocket. With Alan Turing, she starts off as spikes and sharp teeth, and at the end, she's softer and more engaging. And so artistically, we're also communicating how one defeats this opposition. The My Super Science Heroes series, we had three main objectives. We wanted to make science relatable, accessible, fun, and engaging. So by framing these stories around key traits that children have or that scientists have, as opposed to focusing on the scientific results, which of course we talk about in the book. So to be clear, these are biographies. Even though there's an element of fiction to them, we are chronicling the life of these scientists. And so of course, we're talking about all of their important discoveries and accomplishments, but that is not the central focus. the central focus are these important traits that all scientists embody and that children embody. And in framing it this way, we're making science relatable to the young readers. We're also making it accessible because we're demonstrating that one can be a scientist, a young child, a 4-year-old can feel like science is within their grasp without having gone and getting a doctorate. That science is something that can apply to anybody of any age, whether or not you like math or not, whether or not you're an engineer or not. And finally, we wanted science to be fun and engaging. And so by leveraging the superhero framework, which is very exciting for kids, and by bringing in Analisa's wonderful, vibrant, colorful illustrations, the books are really fun to read. And at the end of each book, we actually have activities as well for the kids to keep them engaged and to keep them exploring these concepts. So I want to just wrap up by telling you this series has already reached hundreds of readers around the world. It's been really exciting to hear from people who have read the book and who read it over and over and over again, and they love the puzzles and they love the riddles and they're finding things in the illustrations. A portion of all the profits for this books, and this was one of the arrangements that we had with Sourcebooks, goes to fund a lot of the MCAA initiatives that everybody is doing. And so that was a really important part of our initiative, is to make sure that the storytelling contributes to support all of the science behind it. There's a great website that the Marie Curie Alumni Association contact Micaela Crespo put together, My Super Science Heroes. If you would like to learn more about the series, about the books, if you want to purchase the books, if you want to get some really cool swag for the books, you'll find all sorts of really interesting stuff on the mysuperscienceheroes.com website. And then on my site, carlavalenti.com, I also have a 40-page experiment guide that the Marie Curie Alumni Association created for these books, along with some really great educational resources that are fun companions for teachers or students or just any young readers that might be interested in delving a little bit deeper into some of these concepts. So that concludes my part of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions or pass it on to my fellow panelists if anybody has anything to say.
Okay, thank you very much, Carla, for the presentation. That was like very interesting. So for the participant, as Carla need to leave soon because she has another meeting. So if you have any questions, feel free to deliver to her right now before she leave the meeting.
Or you can always email me. My contact information is on the website, carlavalenti.com, or My Super Science Heroes. We would be delighted to answer any questions.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so while waiting for the others to deliver their questions, I have one. So my questions for the series of My Super Science Heroes. So like so far we have like 2 editions. The first one is Marie Curie, of course, because like we are MCAA community. And the second one is quite interesting, like among all scientists that have live or existed in this world, like why did you choose like Alan Turing as the second series, not for example like Albert Einstein or Isaac Newton, for example? And that's my first question. The second one is,
it's a good question.
Okay.
So it's interesting because we were working with a traditional publisher, there are a lot of considerations that go into it from a business standpoint. So there is a lot of literature already about many existing scientists. Mm-hmm. So we didn't want to bring a book out into the world that already said things that people already knew, or that talked about a scientist that everybody was super familiar with. So partly the objective was to introduce people to a scientist that perhaps they weren't necessarily familiar with. Alan Turing, many people know him, but many people do not. And so this was a good opportunity to be in that in-between place. Secondly, because there are so many of us working together, the Marie Curie Alumni Association, me and the publisher, we had to come up with a scientist that we were all really excited to work about or to talk about. And all of us really liked Alan Turing. But the real reason, and this is a personal one, I loved the idea of him having a nemesis who was an enigma, who wrote in code. So the playful aspect of this story was really exciting, to be able to introduce secrets in the illustration, to be able to introduce codes, to give children an opportunity to play with the book, not just read it. Alan Turing's story was a perfect conduit for that, in a way that I think some of the other scientists, it probably would have been a little bit more difficult to find that playful angle.
Wow, that's very amazing. It brings me like more curiosity, and that will be my second question.
And that's the power of curiosity, right?
Yes, exactly. So that's bring me to my next questions. Is there any upcoming project for the third editions? But if it's not, can you like imagine who's probably the potential scientist that can be like the next edition for the series?
So we don't have another one in the mix just yet. Again, these are business decisions that the publisher has to think about, and we all have to think about. I would be very excited in doing something that was in the realm, especially with COVID and the pandemic, that was in the realm of sort of the science that is evolving, the technology that is evolving now, even with CRISPR or with the vaccines that were developed as part of COVID. It's so relevant, it's so present. I think young readers would really understand the impact of that science. So that would be my choice. But again, it's a collaboration, and so it's something that we really have to talk to as a team. But at the moment, we don't necessarily have another one in the pipeline. So these are our two crowning ones.
Okay. Well, but anyway, we keep looking forward for another new edition.
Thank you.
Super Science Heroes. Okay. Thank you very much, Carla. Very nice and insightful presentations. And now we're moving on to our next speaker, Agata. So you can share your screen and the stage is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to congratulate Carla on the great project. We do some educational projects, but they are dedicated mainly to some older kids and secondary school students. So it's something like a next step also. So today I would like to tell you a few words about our project we run in the Institute of Geophysics, Polish Academy of Sciences, in our step to bridging the gap between schools and science and scientific institutions. So our main goal is to conduct research in earth sciences. And of course, we do a lot in the field of monitoring of geophysical fields. We also run a Polish polar station on Svalbard. However, what we also do, and we are very proud of that, is a variety of various and numerous projects and initiatives dedicated to schools and also to general public. So here on the slide, you see some projects that are coordinated by us and some where we are partners, and some of them are not specifically educational or disseminational project, but they've got some components dedicated to creation of educational resources that we are responsible for. One initiative that should be mentioned here, as it's general, European, and it also go beyond Europe, is Scientix Network. The Institute of Geophysics is the Scientix national contact point in Poland. And this network is dedicated to promoting STEM education on various levels and to supporting teachers, educators from one side, but also researchers and project coordinators and policymakers in the field of STEM education. Here are some examples of science dissemination that we run in the Institute. We are offering open lectures. These are the examples from one of the projects we run called EDU-ARCTIC PL. So we are offering open lectures and webinars for open public. But these kind of activities are rather typical, and I know that many institutions are offering such activities. The other thing that I would like to mention here are competitions in which non-scientists, including students from secondary schools, could win expedition to Polar Station Hornsund on Svalbard. So last year we had the pleasure to take 12 persons who are not PhD students nor scientists who could conduct their small research projects in the Arctic in vicinity of our station. In terms of collaboration with schools, we are also active in this field. I would like to mention here the big network we have of 2,300 teachers and educators from 60 countries. Around half of them are from Poland, as the various initiatives that we run for Polish teachers are long-lasting, and we try to make it cooperation sustainable. So we are trying to provide teachers with new ideas, new initiatives, and new educational resources that could be used by them, so that this network stays in touch and it keeps running and is still alive. As a national contact point for scientists, we also run several workshops, training sessions, webinars, and also national conferences for teachers. And for students, we offer summer schools and trainings in our geophysical observatories, and also some talks when we invite schools to our institute, or we go to the schools with some small lectures. Additionally, we had organized more than 600 online lessons. It's important to say, because at the moment online lessons are nothing special, as after all this pandemic time and restrictions, schools needed to switch into online education. However, we started much earlier. The first lessons were conducted in 2011. Started with the project EDU-ARCTIC, and we had also some online transmissions from our Polish Polar Station on Svalbard to connect with polar researchers and schools in Poland. Then we switched to the European level and also offered similar lessons from not only our station, but also Norwegian, Icelandic, and Faroese stations to all interested schools from Europe. And this is how this network of teachers and educators started. But another example, which is totally different from what we did previously, is a 3D mapping. This is a multimedia show. It was called 1 Year in the Arctic, and it was presented to more than 230,000 spectators who watched that during 2 winter seasons in Wilanów, in our palace in Wilanów, and it was broadcasted on building. So it was prepared specially for this building to be presented over all weekends during winter time. For 2 years. But today, as we have really many projects, as you saw previously on the slide, I would like to focus on one of them, namely the one dedicated to citizen science. Citizen science is a new approach, relatively new approach, because it's successfully implemented by some institutions. However, still this potential of using citizen science in collaboration with schools is, in my opinion, not spread enough, and it still could be much more used in many countries. We run several citizen science initiatives within BRITEC projects. I will tell you about one of them that we conducted in our institute. Here you see some forms of citizen science projects, from contributory through collaborative to co-created. We try to be as co-creative as possible, so to include teachers to collaborate with us and to also say what's possible, what they would like to do within particular citizen science pilots. And we believe the more collaborative or co-creative researchers are able to be, the better results and the more satisfaction also the participants of such initiatives gain. So we had some, after 3 years of implementing the project and after running several citizen science initiatives on national levels in 4 countries, we had some conclusions regarding the benefits, but also some challenges and the roles of particular groups in our projects. We had 3 main groups: students, researchers, teachers. And as regards students, we saw that thanks to participation in such pilots, they were exposed to all the steps of scientific inquiry, which basically helped them to better understand complex conditions occurring in nature. But also this participation in real life science practices, because we chose such pilots that were really useful for our researchers. So it was not something, okay, let's do it and you will learn something, but it was also, let's do something to learn, but also to help scientists to gather the material, to analyze it, and let's collaborate. So thanks to that, they knew how science works, and also we were trying to make it as much hands-on as possible. And we know that it stimulates faster learning and cognition. As regards teachers, they had a big role here, definitely, because they first needed to motivate students to participate in the process. However, from focus group interviews that we had and so from the whole evaluation process, we mainly heard that it was quite easy. Students were motivated. They really appreciated that they had some visits from the researchers at school, so they feel proud. In many cases, the schools participating were rather small, in small cities or villages, so the visits of the researcher was something special to them. So it increased the motivation also both for students and the teachers to participate. Teachers were the first quality check. They were supervising the whole process of collecting and analyzing data, and also they needed to make sure that the data sent to the researchers were correct and proper. And also they were facilitators in the communication between students and researchers. And in terms of researchers and the benefits or challenges as well, regarding the implementation of citizen science pilots, definitely working together with schools helps to save time in looking for volunteers, because we are gaining quite a big number of participants per one teacher that is communicating with us. So it's a really effective in terms of looking for big numbers of volunteers. However, it also needs some extra effort in training teachers in scientific inquiry and science research methodologies. So you need to be, you need to provide a really good training in order teachers know how to avoid some errors, how to check the quality of data, how to do that properly. We decided to have a multi-step training for teachers. First, we had a preparatory workshop where we were also discussing how we could organize the whole pilot. So this was this co-creation step of the whole initiative. And next, when the steps were, especially in this river pilot that I will explain in a moment, where the rivers were decided, then the researcher decided on some visits to schools and also to the field measurement points. So they were going together to the field, to the river, deciding on which part of the river will be monitored by students and how, and did the first measurements and photography. For researchers, it was also very important that they could start a collaboration with local communities. They could communicate why it's important to do particular tests it was especially important in this river pilot because scientists wanted to conduct some tracer experiments. So putting the dye, especially the red dye, into the river was at the very beginning with no information what's going on there, making some threats in the society. And having students participating in the whole process and also explaining to their parents, grandparents, and other people in community helped a lot and gained this acceptance for such tests. A few words about the BRITEC project. We ran it in a consortium of 6 partners from 4 countries. We were leading the project from Poland. We also had Belgium, Greece, and Spain on board. And I mentioned 3 collaborating groups: researchers, teachers, and pupils. We had some outcomes dedicated to aims, the main aims of the BRITEC. So one of the main aims was to support the collaboration between researchers and students and teachers, so to bring all these groups together. We also wanted to co-create and pilot citizen science initiatives in schools at the national level. And thanks to that, we were able to produce citizen science toolkits, including some guidelines, resources, examples of good practices in implementation of such initiatives at school. And we also wanted to expand the knowledge and to share information, share the good practice on a European level. And therefore, we decided on creation a massive open online course dedicated to teachers and report on best practices for stakeholders, mainly ministries of education in Europe. And I promised to say a few words about the river pilots. This pilot was dedicated to observations of the seasonal change in river riparian vegetation and changes in macroclimate of river valleys. The main investigator here was Professor Monika Kalinowska from Hydrology and Hydrodynamic departments in my institute. And students supervised by teachers were observing the river and riparian vegetation and the changes. Their main task was to take photographs of the channels of selected rivers in specific cross sections and also at specific intervals. We recommended that it's not, it's around 1 month break between every photograph. And some schools were also doing some simple hydrological and meteorological measurements. We had 9 schools implementing the pilot with 10 rivers and 11 locations. Here on the left, you see the Warszawice channel during these tracer experiments run by the scientists in collaboration with school kids, and also some photographs taken by students. This was a difficult time because they started the observations and monitoring of the river in 2019, and then after the breakout of pandemic, there was some problems with going together as a group to the river. However, this school did a wonderful job, and they were able to share this work and to do photographs, to take photographs every month. So you see the changes within half a year. So from almost no vegetation till the full growth of vegetation. And what we find out from this pilot, so for students, it was learning how seasons affect the river vegetation and the macroclimate river conditions. They were combining them to the observations from meteorological stations in the vicinity, but not very close to the river, because not every river has stations very close to it. They also learned, and more importantly, their parents also found out that some devices like mobile phone could also provide valuable information for researchers and not only for gaming or entertaining. And for researchers, they received information on the seasonal changes from various locations. It was important because we are based in Warsaw. So to regularly observe all these 11 locations, it would take a lot of time for one person. It would be like traveling almost the whole time. And we started also some collaboration with local communities. I mentioned this tracer experiment in Warszawice here. It was extremely important. And also we could communicate research aims and results to society. I encourage you to check on the BRITEC website. We have the Citizen Science Toolkit and the guidelines for teachers and educators. I hope you will find there some useful practicalities, how to start, how to organize the whole process of collaboration with schools, and that you will take this opportunity. And I hope in future we will have more such citizen science initiatives, because they are really profiting for both engaged parties. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wow, thank you very much, Agata. It was like very insightful, especially for me, because I live very close to Warsaw, and I had no idea that this interesting project is actually already exists for like more than 2 years. Well, unfortunately, I lost communications with Marcin, so there will be just like Agata and Carla who will present like today. So if you have any questions, you can just like drop in the chat box. And Carla also still here, so if you have any questions to Carla, you can deliver to her as well. And for me, I have questions for Agata. So we can see that you already like have a lot of involvement with students. It can be like from students like pupil school also, or probably also like university students as well. And I was curious that what was actually the biggest challenge, like to try to get this or gather these children to be engaged to science? And if you have any challenge, like how do you overcome with it?
Yeah, so our main contact points are teachers. So we basically started all the collaborations with engaging first teachers. And once we have teachers on board, then the role of teacher is to motivate the students. So I think it's the most effective way when we are collaborating with teachers. And we observe that as we had so many initiatives lasting many years, and this network of teachers really devoted to collaboration are growing, and we observe the faces of the most engaged teachers in every single project that we are starting. So I think that the key to the success is exactly to get to involve really engaged and enthusiastic teachers who would like to share and to use our materials. We have many challenges, of course, if you collaborate, and I think that the first thing to be mentioned here is convince researchers that this collaboration with school is important, is effective, that it's not like they put a lot of effort and they spend a lot of time to prepare some materials, and they should maybe focus on writing papers only. They start, it's like they are coming back to us, and they are engaged in another initiative. So it's once it starts to give them satisfaction, then it's like repetition and the next project, etc. In terms of citizen science, I think it's easier, because then they see the benefits from the very beginning. They may gain more data to be analyzed. So in terms of citizen science, it's easier. In terms of giving lectures to schools or creation some of educational materials, it's not always easy to convince them. I mean, we have a group that is collaborating with me for many years, and I know that I may count on them. However, to bring some new people on board for this educational work is not easy, because some of them rather would like to focus on writing papers or presenting at conferences. So this is also important to show this importance of science communication and collaboration.
Okay, and is there any different approach for like the students, like coming from the teacher, and it could be like depends on different subject of science, like for example, like the approach could be different if you want to let them engage something related to biology, and it's going to be different to physics, and it will be different as well to chemistry, or it could be the same for all of them.
Yeah, we are basically working with geography and physics. However, we are trying to also introduce and invite experts from other fields to combine STEM widely. We know, for instance, that quite often this biological part, environmental parts dedicated with, for instance, animals living in the Arctic or in the Antarctic are more interesting for students. So they are taken first, the first magnet to bring them, to bring the attention of students. So there are some topics definitely that are more attractive to students. However, in our project, we are trying to cover a range of topics. In terms of these citizen science initiatives, we had the second one was dedicated to UV radiation and how it influenced production of vitamin D, and also how long could we stay outside sunbathing. So we had several issues here. We had medicine, biology, and physics, geophysics, and this observation of UV radiation or some measurements. So we are trying to combine various issues to make it more appealing also for students.
Okay.
See a question on chat.
Yes, there's a question from Silvana. I will read this for you. And first of all, she said thank you for both of you, Agata and Carla, for inspiring presentations. And this question particularly for Agata. Did any participant, like school or teacher, lose interest along the project? And which were the main difficulties they had, if any?
So in terms of the BRITEC project, the main challenge was when the pandemic started, because especially for this pilot with UV radiation, we wanted students to make some observations and to note how they are dressed for a particular time of the day and how long they are being outside sunbathing. Also during such events like school trips, etc. The main idea was to do that during the school trips or some being outside from the school, but still within the school activity. And once the pandemic started, it was not possible to do that under these conditions. So we dropped some schools that were very interested in this topic. And then only some of them decided to do it on individual basis. So then they were observing and noting the observations and measurements during individual staying outside, which was also difficult because at the very beginning of the pandemic, it was rather suggested that we should stay at home. So also going out was difficult. So that was the main challenge for this UV radiation. And also it affected this river pilot because it was the idea also was to bring the whole class or the whole group implementing the project to the spots and to do the observations and field measurements. And it was also not possible during the remote education. So yeah, I think in this case, the pandemic was the biggest challenge.
Okay. Well, I hope that since now it seems like the world is getting better, it will start like healing. I hope that like you will have a lot of like interesting upcoming projects to be executed in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess I have no more questions also from the participants. So thank you very much, Carla and Agata, and it was very insightful. And yeah, I hope that it can bring some inspiration for our participants today. Like they can like engage like more kids in science. And I would also to thank like the participants. Thank you for joining us today. And stay tuned for the next episode of MCAA Around the World webinar series. So thank you. Have a good day and enjoy your weekend. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.